Hello everybody and welcome to part 5 of What If Midoriya Bonded with Venom, the Sports Festival edition. Yeah, I know some of you have been having trouble with the Venom voice, so I hope I managed to do the subtitles by now. I mean, if I did, you should see the subtitle. You can go to the subtitles and just go to American English, which is the extra option aside from automatic, and that one will... I've only done the Venom voices because it takes a long time to make subtitles. I've been wanting to do it for a while, but I've already struggled to make this video before deadline. So making everything else before time I struggle a lot with time. Sorry. So yeah, that said, please like, subscribe, hit that bell, check out my Discord in the comments, and enjoy the video. Can't believe that just happened, Midoriya thought while being escorted out of the USJ by the police. They still had some questions they wanted to ask and information to gather.
Regardless, it did happen,
Venom responded. Yeah, still, we have some unfinished business. There's stuff we have to discuss once we get home, Midoriya stated in his head.
Okay,
Venom said, slightly disappointed. Todoroki looked at his left hand. He could remember vividly what had just happened, yet he had no control over his fire. It just emanated from his body on instinct. He had promised himself he wouldn't. Thoughts were racing through his head. Had he done the right thing? Is everything alright, Todoroki? Ida asked, concerned for his classmates. I'm fine, he answered coldly. Are you sure about that? Midoriya chimed in. I just have some stuff to figure out, Todoroki said. He was in the battle, but the moment his fire activated, his head wasn't in the game. Instead, his life had flashed before his eyes, and memories had come rushing back. Talking to his mother was the first step he should probably take. The situation was officially resolved. The 2 teachers that were injured were taken to the hospital in order to recover, while the injured students were just sent to the infirmary. Baku had a couple broken bones and bruises, and Kirishima had only suffered blunt trauma. Recovery Girl administered her treatment and managed to heal them pretty quickly, heading to the hospital after to look after the teachers. The police inspected the surrounding area, finding a giant monster nearby. However, it didn't match the description they had been given, as the silvery substance it was supposed to have on it was gone. Still, they took him into custody. Riot had managed to escape, however. Report, Carlton Drake said as his assistant entered the lab. They were currently conducting a bonding test, but seemed to have gone poorly. Well, sir, as you know, 5 hours ago the operation at UA began. However, the results of said operation were poor. Not only did they fail to extract subject 1477, but specimen 18 has been lost, the assistant said, afraid of how his boss would react. What do you mean they lost the specimen? Carlton Drake screamed, turning to his assistant to vent all his frustrations. Well, sir, it appears it was bonded to the artificial creation, the Nomu, that was apprehended by the police. The thing is, when the police found the creature, the symbiote was no longer with it, the assistant answered, afraid of what would happen to him. But they still have the other 3 specimens we gave them, and Dr. Karaki still continuing his trials. Carlton straightened his clothes and coughed slightly. I apologize for that outburst, he said in a more calm fashion. It is disappointing to say the least. We donated 4 out of the 18 specimens we had. Not only did they fail to capture subject 1477, but they also lost a valued specimen. I suppose I'll have to speak with Dr. Garaki myself. He turned around to look at the results of the trial. Sadly, they were disappointing as well. Dr. Skirth, you're still running low on test subjects, correct? He asked. That's right, so far only a few have stabilized, but all have died after a week of bonding at the latest. We were hoping to extract data from subject 1477 in order to further stabilize the bonding, the doctor informed. Good. Here's your newest subject, Carlton said, patting his assistant on the shoulder before leaving the room. He had a call to make, one that wouldn't be very pleasant. We should talk now, Izuku stated.
But I don't want to,
Venom complained. He was pretty satisfied by the activity they were doing. Watching a movie while eating, especially on a day off, was fun. We'd said we'd do it yesterday, but I was exhausted when we got home and just collapsed. I'm still not sure you didn't have anything to do with that, V, Midoriya commented, pausing the movie they were watching.
Me? How could I do anything there? You were just tired as hell.
Venom responded, making it obvious that he was partly to blame. First question, what exactly are you? How many more of you are there? Where did you come from? Why was there another, what did you call it, Clintar at the USJ? What's your end goal? Midoriya asked. Venom had been keeping certain information from him, and now was the time to get serious, especially since Riot showed up.
That's a lot more than one question,
Venom responded sarcastically. He wanted to get out of it. He had already spent their first year together avoiding the important questions, and he would try for as long as he could. Be serious, V, this is important. Our lives could depend on this, Midoriya scolded, causing the little symbiote to shrink a little, thinking the situation over.
Fine. These are the answers,
Venom responded.
As I said before, I'm an alien, a Clintar from a planet of the same name. There are like hundreds of thousands of us throughout the universe, bonding, living, surviving out there. As for an end goal, I don't have one. Neither does humanity really. The main goal is always survival. As for why there was another symbiote at the USJ, that's a bit of a longer story.
He started telling Izuku his story. The story of how he came to be and how he arrived on Earth. He, along with some others, were outcasts, sent adrift in space on a meteorite. It had been so long he forgot the reason for it, but he was sent out nonetheless. They only managed to survive thanks to using small animals they found on the way as hosts. Eventually, they approached Earth, and the meteorite they had learned to call home was obliterated, killing many of them. Some survived and were taken to the Life Foundation for further study. Luckily, he managed to hide from them and avoided the grueling fate his friends suffered. And that's when I found you, or well, freed you, right? Izuku asked, trying to piece the timeline together.
Well, I have been studying the display for a while, but yeah,
Venom responded. What about that Clintar that showed up at the USJ? Who were they? Midoriya asked, curious.
that was a riot. He was sort of our leader for a long while. Although, I have no idea why he would do what he did.
Venom answered. More questions followed, questions which Venom tried answering as best he could, but didn't always know the answer to. He had been alive for a long while, and memory was always a tricky thing. Meanwhile, in another place, Todoroki visited the hospital. He needed to have a chat with a certain someone. The day of rest ended and the students returned to school. The events that had happened the last day they were there were stressful, so that's what the class was mostly talking about. They had a day in between, but it was hard to get such an experience out of your head, especially when it was constantly on the news. Attention everyone! I understand the events of the USJ were stressful, but class is going to start soon, so let's start calming down, Yaoyorozu said, standing on the podium to get everyone's attention. The clock had just hit 8:24 a.m., and it was her duty to tell this to the class, so that's what she did. After, she sat down herself. Hey, Tsu, who do you think is going to teach class today? Ashido asked, turning around to ask Tsuyu, almost following the process. No idea, Ribbit, Mr. Aizawa's still in the hospital recovering from his injuries, Tsuyu answered, thinking about it. Anyone could be their substitute. Seconds later, the door opened and Midnight stepped into the class. "Good morning, young boys and girls," she said as she walked in. "Oh, it's Midnight," the class thought. Some were excited, others a bit weary of the situation, wondering why she would be left in charge of them. As she walked to the podium, a memory came across Midnight's head. "Wait, you want me to teach your class?" she asked. She was surprised that Aizawa would ask this of her. "Why not ask Yamada?" "That loudmouth will make my students deaf in less than 5 minutes," Aizawa answered, trying to lighten the mood a little. Everyone had been so glum around him for the past day that the task had fallen on him. It wasn't really his strong suit. Even All Might looked very glum when he visited. "I do it myself, but the doctors say they want to keep me around a little longer. Physical recovery is going to be such a pain. Not to mention the adjusting." "Don't rush through this. This stuff takes time," Midnight cautioned her friend. "Alright, boys and girls, time to get to it. It's my duty to inform you about an important event that will be held in the next few weeks, the UA Sports Festival," she said, exciting most of the class. The mooch of Ka seemed to get her excited too. Are we sure this is a good idea though?" Jiro asked, bringing her concerns up to the teacher, which kinda put a damper on things, disappointing Midnight. "Yeah, villains did just attack our school. Are we sure they won't be able to do so again?" Ojiro added, piling up on Jiro's concerns with many others adding on after. Trying to stay positive, Midnight responded, "Don't worry too much about it, kids. We have taken special precautions in case that does happen. That said, you all need to train up and prepare for the festival. That's all I was told to tell you, so class dismissed, I guess." The rest of the day went on pretty calmly. The students went through their regular classes, had lunch, at which point Izuku had an interesting talk with Uraka and Ida in which they discussed hero motivations, and then the classes resumed like normal. The only rare occurrence was that a crowd had gathered in front of the 1A classroom at the end of the day. They apparently wanted to know what the class looked like since they were on the news. Some declarations of war were issued, but nothing too serious happened. The students had their sights set on their next objective, the UA Sports Festival. And to that end, they started training like no tomorrow. They trained and trained, trying to prepare for anything the school might throw at them. Some did strength training, others focused on developing their skills. Izuku focused on training up with Venom. For some reason, he was feeling faster and stronger than usual, so he was learning to adapt. Baku, on the other hand, was trying to develop his skills and new attacks, while Todoroki, after talking it through with his mother, was getting accustomed to using his fire side again. He was still hesitant to use it, but he would if he needed to. Before they knew it, the day of the festival arrived. "Izuku, please be careful and don't get hurt," Inko pleaded as Izuku got ready for school. Venom stretched out from his feet, grabbing onto the shoes and tying them up for him. "I'll try my hardest, Mom, but I don't want to lose either," Izuku responded, grabbing his backpack. "Do your best, son. I'll record the whole festival in HD," Inko responded. "Thanks," he said, smiling at his mother, although the words were directed at 2 people at once.
"You're welcome,"
Venom responded. He hadn't said anything against Inko, even though she was being very annoying. After a while of waiting in the changing rooms, time which the students used to try and calm their nerves and get ready for the trials ahead, the students were called into the stadium by President Mike. "Now for the introductory speech," Midnight said, introducing herself as the chief umpire, to mix results. "For the student pledge, we have Katsuki Bakugo." Calmly, Bakugo stepped out of the crowd and went up the stage. He approached the mic and said, "I just want to say, I'm gonna win." The comment angered everyone, and instantly, a target was painted on the backs of Class 1A, one that even made the audience look at them in a more negative light. Regardless of the circumstances, the festival proceeded as planned, with Midnight announcing the first event. A wheel went through a bunch of different options, ending on the option of obstacle race. Knowing what the game would be, it was now her job to explain the details, so that's what she did. The moment she was done, Izuku started formulating a strategy. The problem was he didn't know what obstacles would be in his way, so he had no idea what to plan for.
Don't worry about it too much,
Venom advised.
Just keep it quiet and do your best. You'll end up fine. You'll see.
You're right, Izuku said, taking a deep breath. The rules of the race had been explained, so the students got into position. Once everything was ready, the countdown started and the race began. The students started running, all of them wanting to get a lead in the race. Izuku, with a glance, recognized that the hallway was too narrow and decided to avoid the crowd. Instead, he used Venom to run on the wall. Todoroki was the first to make it out of the hallway, freezing it over, trying to stop his competition. As he noticed he hadn't gotten as many people as he had hoped for, he quickened his pace. He couldn't be outdone. He wanted to win and prove he was good enough.
Don't get too caught up in this. It's a marathon, not a sprint. You don't have to win the race to win the festival,
Venom said, advice which actually helped Izuku. He slowed down, wanting to conserve energy. He was sure of himself. All he needed were some good moments to show off, and that would come later. Trying too hard now could be detrimental in the long run. As Izuku slowed down, Midnight accelerated. He knew Todoroki was the fiercest competition, so he was bouncing around trying to catch up to him in order to restrain him. However, once he managed to catch up, he was swatted away by one of the robots. That revealed himself to be the second obstacle. Todoroki quickly surveyed his surroundings and froze the robots while they were off balance, advancing while putting another obstacle in his opponent's way. Damn it, that was close, Izuku mentioned, jumping back in order to not be squashed by the robot. He scaled the rubble and continued forward. He didn't need to end up first, but doing well was still an objective. Todoroki maintained a lead, but Izuku was still among the first 40 to reach the second obstacle. Our time to shine, he commented, jumping into the pit while Tsuyu jumped, grabbing onto the tightrope. Izuku, finding a more efficient solution, shot out a tendril, attaching it to the next wall, and started swinging around the pits until he reached the end of the obstacle. He was now in third place, only Todoroki and Bakugo in front of him. He kept going until he reached the next obstacle, at which point he realized the situation quickly. In front of him were only two people, those being Todoroki and Bakugo. Two powerhouses that were fighting over dominance of the top spot. If I approach too much, I'm likely to get their attention, Izuku thought, looking at them.
Don't want to get hurt,
Venom interjected. Then we'll have to focus on getting on to the next event. We just need to go at it carefully and avoid the mines. Actually, we can dig some out, right? Izuku asked. He had a limited arsenal in this situation, so having a couple weapons in the tank would be very advantageous. Todoroki was forced to use his fire, but he managed to secure first place, pushing Bakugo away and freezing him in place for a moment. After him, Bakugo claimed the second spot, Ibara the third, Izuku the fourth, Honokugi the fifth, and so on. Wow, you did pretty well, Midoriya. You just cruised through the obstacles so nonchalantly, Uraka said, praising her friend after having finished the race herself. It wasn't that big of a deal. My quirk was just suited for what I was doing, Izuku retorted.
Come on, we did great,
Venom said. Moments later, the 42 first students to finish the race were told to gather, so Midnight could explain the next exercise. She revealed it to be a cavalry battle and explained exactly what that meant, in case anyone didn't understand. A cavalry battle, huh? That means we're going to have to work on teams. Jiro's out of the running, so the only ones that are left in the running that can be detrimental are Todoroki and Bakugo, so it's a priority to avoid them. Still, I should focus on gathering a team that I can work well with and... He started muttering, thinking of the best course of action.
You can getting too much into your head. Again.
Venom complained, snapping him out of thought. His analytical mind was great, but it got him to ignore his surroundings too much sometimes. "Hey Midoriya, let's team up!" Uraka said, approaching him. This is why Venom had to keep an eye on things so he wouldn't look like a spaz in front of her. "Are you sure you want to?" Izuku asked, trying to give his friend an out in case she was only being polite. "Yeah! Come on, teaming up with people you work well with is a good idea. Plus, you have a pretty strong quirk," Uraka reasoned. "If we get Ida on our side, then we'll surely win." "Yeah, if we get him, we can zoom around the arena and steal a lot of headbands," Midoriya added. Thinking that Uraka's strategy was sound, they went to ask Ida to join them, an invitation which he accepted. It was a very sound strategy after all. The teams formed, and once the 15 minutes of preparation ended, the event began. Many of the teams directly approached Todoroki's, intent on taking the 10 million points from him. He, however, foresaw this strategy, so using Kaminari's and Yaoyorozu's quirks to stun his opponents, he froze them in place. He intended to collect the headbands from his frozen targets, but Bakugo approached him after trying to steal his headband. Since Todoroki's team was occupied avoiding Bakugo's, the other handful of teams that weren't frozen in the attack went to scavenge the points. No team did better in this endeavor than Midoriya's. Thanks to Ida's speed and Venom adjusting the position and taking headbands, they managed to steal over 4 headbands out of 5 targets. The only one they did manage to steal was Tsuyu's, since she had stuck it to her head using one of Mineta's balls. Points shifted throughout the match, going from one team to another, but Todoroki maintained the lead throughout it all. Thanks to mixing his strategy with fire, ice, and even a couple of gadgets made by Hatsume, they managed to hold on to his bandana. However, he didn't manage to gain any others like he had originally planned. Minutes after it all started, the game came to an end. Todoroki's team having ended first, Midoriya's second, Shinso's third, Bakugo's fourth, and Tsuyu's fifth. The event having ended, the students were given some time to go eat lunch and enjoy themselves for a bit. They had fought bravely and deserved a bit of rest. "So what do you want to eat?" Izuku asked in his head as he headed toward the food stands.
"Some Ikayami would be nice,"
Venom answered, giving one option, although in the end he'd end up eating all the stands out of business. As they walked to the stands, they passed by Todoroki talking to his father. "Just because I'm using my fire doesn't mean I'll be working with you or have accepted you. I'll never forgive you for what you did," Todoroki screamed at his father, his voice full of resentment and frustration. "In the end, the power is mine and mine alone." Izuku hastened his step, not wanting to interrupt the conversation. After an hour, everyone returned to the arena and the festival continued, with President Mike explaining how the next round was going to go. "Before we draw lots, there is one thing we have to get straightened out," Midnight announced, holding the box with one hand and pointing at the students with the other. "Tsuyu Asui, Minoru Mineta, and Mezzo Shoji. Your team ended up in 5th place. Since we need 16 people for this competition, one of you can move on to the tournament. You'll have to decide amongst yourselves." "It should be Shoji," Tsuyu instantly said. "As much as I hate to admit it, you're right. It was my strategy and all, but he did carry us all of the game. Quite literally," Mineta responded. "Thanks, guys," Shoji said in response, slightly embarrassed. "No problem, Ribbit," Tsuyu responded. "Just win for us, okay?" Mineta said. Actually, I have something to say that might make this easier," Ojiro commented, gaining the attention of everyone around him. "I've been deliberating what to do for a while, and I'd like to withdraw from the tournament." His classmates tried to convince him not to do such a foolish thing, but he withdrew regardless, thinking it wasn't right to continue without knowing how he got there. Being in a similar situation, Nidengenki Shoda withdrew as well, allowing both Tsuyu and Mineta to move up to the tournament. Lots were drawn in order to determine the placements in the tournament. The matches ended up being Izuku vs Shinso, Tsuyu vs Shoji, Bakugo vs Ochako, Kirishima vs Zero, Yaoyorozu vs Todoroki, Mineta vs Kaminari, Ida vs Hatsume, and Aoyama vs Mina. After those were decided, the recreational games were held in order to give the other students a chance to enjoy themselves and maybe show off a bit too. The time came for the first match of the first round to begin. Both fighters stepped into the arena ready to give it their all. "So you can just give up," Shinso said, putting Midoriya on edge. He had been warned about the boy's quirk and knew not to give in to such an obvious taunt. "In a way, this is a test of how strong your spirit is. If you know what you want your future to hold for you, you can't worry about what other people think." President Mike announced the beginning of the match, but that didn't stop Shinso from speaking. "That monkey was going on about his pride earlier, but I just think he's an idiot for throwing away his chance like that," Shinso continued, angering Midoriya, an action which Venom benefited from slightly. "Don't you dare talk about him like that!" Izuku shouted, rushing at Shinso, wanting to attack. He needed to defend his friend's honor. As he ran, the purple-haired boy grinned as Midoriya stopped in his tracks. Victory was now assured. "That's it," Shinso said. From his point of view, it was already over. "I win." The crowd looked confused at the match, as not even the announcer knew what had just happened.
"What's happening, Izuku? Izuku?"
Venom asked, to no response from his host. "So here we are. You're lucky to have been so blessed, Izuku Midoriya. Now turn around and walk out of bounds like a good little hero," Shinso ordered. Not being able to disobey the power that had hold over him, Izuku started walking.
"Yeah, we aren't doing that,"
Venom announced, taking full control over his host's body. Usually he'd ask for permission, but Izuku wasn't responding, and he knew he wouldn't approve of losing in such a way. Black tendrils manifested from Izuku's body, enveloping it in a black goop. It didn't just stop at that, as Izuku seemed to grow at least a meter in height. "Hey, what's going on?" Shinso asked as his enemy turned around.
"You just made a big mistake. That's what,"
Venom answered out loud. First time he had the chance to really speak in public, and he felt he had nailed the line. No, you're supposed to be under my control, damn it!" Shinso complained.
"Just some advice. Don't whine when you lose. It's not too becoming of a hero,"
Venom responded, rushing at the boy. He punched him, sending him tumbling back. Luckily, he was not thrown out of bounds. Anger swelling up inside him, Shinso rushed at Izuku, punching him across the face in retaliation, an action which woke Izuku up.
"So that's how it takes to wake you up,"
Venom noted, feeling the reaction caused in the body. "Why are you so lucky, Izuku Midoriya? Lucky to have a quirk that can help you accomplish your dreams, to avoid my power. You have nothing but luck!" Shinso screamed, trying to get a reaction. Maybe he'd be able to get him down after all. "You think it's just luck? If you want to become a hero, it takes skill, and practice, and training. Believe it or not, I know where you're coming from," Izuku said, the suit shrinking back into himself. "It takes a lot of work and struggle, but you'll get there eventually." Hearing that, Shinso smiled, but before he could try anything, he was tackled by Izuku, who extended tendrils into Shinso, pushing him further back. Just like that, his enemy was out of bounds, and he had won. "With a quirk like yours, I think you can be a great hero, so don't give up," Midoriya said, offering his defeated foe a gentle smile. The words couldn't have been better picked, as they made an impact inside of Shinso.
"Your actions are confusing sometimes," Venom
said.
"But I get it."
The second match began shortly after, with both Shoji and Tsuyu stepping into the ring. In terms of pure strength, Shoji had the advantage, but Tsuyu managed to steal the victory, tiring him out and repeatedly heating Shoji with her poisonous spit, It only stung a little, but with repeated hits, she managed to stun him long enough to yoink him out of bounds with her tongue. The third match was a fierce battle between Ochako Uraraka and Katsuki Bakugo. The girl fought bravely against the odds, doing all she could to defeat her opponent. Sadly, his overwhelming firepower ended up beating her determination, so she ended up losing the fight. The fourth match was between Kirishima and Zero. The moment it started, Zero tried to yoink Kirishima out of bounds like Tsuyu had done before, but Kirishima hardened his feet and rooted himself into the ground, grabbing onto the tape used on him and using Zero's strategy against him. Zero let go of the tape before he could be thrown out. Kirishima then rushed at him, tackling Zero into the ground and restraining him, winning the match. The fifth match was Yaomomo against Todoroki. The fight started with Yaoyorozu making a cannon and shooting it at Todoroki. She was insecure of herself but knew she had to get her opponent out of bounds as soon as possible. Todoroki made a wall of ice to block the cannonball and shot a flame attack at Yaoyorozu, which she blocked with a shield. Todoroki used the opportunity to get in close and froze her in place quickly and precisely. He was angry, but he had a bit of time to calm down and didn't let his emotions get in the way of the match. Just like that, he had won the match in less than a minute. The sixth match was between Mineta and Kaminari. As soon as the match started, Mineta shot his balls at Kaminari, managing to lock him in place. Kaminari still sent out his biggest attack, managing to knock Mineta out. One of them was restrained, the other knocked out, but since Kaminari still had some mobility left, the match was given to him, even if he wasn't in the best condition after his own attack. The seventh match wasn't really a match, more of a gadget exposition, which used Ida as a human mannequin. Once she had showcased everything she had built, Hatsume stepped out of bounds, giving Ida the victory. The last match of the round was between Aoyama and Ashido. Aoyama tried to quickly throw Ashido out of bounds using his naval laser, but Ashido used her asset to skate around the arena to evade the attacks. She eventually managed to get in close enough to disable her opponent, effectively winning the match with one quick uppercut. After a short while, the second round began with Tsuyu Asui and Izuku Midoriya stepping up for the first match. Alright, after we win this, we'll likely have to take care of Bakugo, so let's try and preserve energy here, Midoriya told Venom inside his head.
Don't get too cocky. We both know she's a worthy adversary,
Venom said while Midoriya got in a fighting stance. The match started and Venom manifested himself around Izuku. Midoriya rushed at Tsuyu, wanting to quickly throw her out of bounds, but she jumped over him, grabbing onto him with her tongue. She landed behind Izuku and tried to flick him out of the arena, but Venom rooted Izuku into the ground. Izuku grabbed the tongue and flinged her out instead, using her own idea against her. Since the tongue was attached to her, Izuku was able to throw her out of bounds without Tsuyu being able to do much against him. The second match was Kirishima vs. Bakugo. Bakugo, having the range, used it to his advantage, barraging Kirishima with attacks until his quirk gave out, at which point he pinned him down, winning the match and passing to the next round. As soon as the third match started, wanting to get it over with as quickly as possible, Kaminari sent out an indiscriminate shock at maximum power. In order to block, Todoroki erected a wall of ice and took a step back so as to not let the electricity flowing through the ice hit him. Once the attack stopped, he quickly and easily froze Kaminari in place, winning the match and passing to the next round. The fourth match was between Ashido and Ida. As soon as it started, Ashido started moving around, trying to prolong it as much as possible, but being faster than her and even using his Recipro Burst, Ida sped at her, pushing her out of bounds, winning the match. "You ready to lose, Deku?" Bakugo asked, taunting his opponent as soon as they stepped into the arena for the first match of the semifinals. The match started, and as if on reflex, Venom manifested around Izuku while he got ready for the fight.
Nah, you'll be doing enough of that for both of us,
Venom responded, making it seem as if Midoriya had said it. He had really grown to dislike Bakugo, and now was his chance to vent a bit. Bakugo rushed at Midoriya, throwing a small explosion at him. Izuku jumped into the air, evading the attack. He shot two tendrils at Bakugo, grabbing onto him. Once he landed, he flinged Bakugo, throwing him against the ground. As he fell, Bakugo grabbed onto one of the tendrils and made a small explosion in the palm of his hands, freeing himself. He managed to maneuver and land comfortably on the ground, rushing at Izuku after, ready to strike again. Izuku took a step back, then another, as attack after attack came at him. Bakugo threw a right hook which Izuku grabbed, flinging him onto the ground. "That hurt, you damn nerd!" Bakugo shouted, getting back up and shooting another explosion at Midoriya. Midoriya evaded another attack, but Bakugo managed to land the next one, causing the symbiote to leave the area of the body for a moment, an action which somehow seemed familiar to Bakugo. Izuku took a step backwards, gaining some distance from his opponent as unconsciously he started growing. Bakugo's eyes widened for a moment as he realized what he was remembering. They narrowed again as he focused on the match. Izuku rushed at Bakugo again, trying to slash at him. He was going too quickly for Bakugo, so he had to evade using his explosions as a boost. After 3 attacks, Izuku was left open, which gave Bakugo an opportunity to shoot an explosion at his opponent, which made full impact. "Just like I thought," he said, smirking, as the symbiote was reattaching itself to Izuku.
"I don't think we can win this, Izuku. I think you were right,"
Venom said in Izuku's head. "We still have to try," Midoriya responded, trying to slash Bakugo again. This time, Bakugo saw Izuku coming and countered. He barraged with attack after attack, severely weakening Izuku.
"Time for plan B,"
Izuku said, throwing the 2 mines he'd grabbed before at Bakugo. They activated close to Bakugo, stunning him for a moment, and even acting as flashbangs. Izuku rushed at Bakugo, seeing this as his opportunity. He tackled Bakugo, rushing towards the end of the arena, wanting to throw him out. But Bakugo managed to recuperate, unleashing the strongest explosion he could, separating Izuku from the symbiote. "It seems like I win, Deku," Bakugo said, pinning Izuku to the ground while black goo laid under him, slowly moving towards Izuku, wanting to properly reattach itself to its host. "The winner is Katsuki Bakugo," Midnight announced after a few moments of seeing Izuku struggling. It was clear that he couldn't keep going. Bakugo let go and left the arena, having placed a couple pieces of the puzzle together. The second round of the semifinals went by rather quickly. As soon as it started, Ida tried pushing Todoroki out of bounds, but he managed to root himself using his ice. Knowing how his opponent would likely react, Todoroki used his ice to limit Ida's mobility, until he finally managed to freeze him over, winning the match. After a couple minutes came the final, the match which everyone including All Might had a very close eye on. Of course, they all had different reasons to do so. It was a fierce battle between Bakugo and Todoroki. They started by exchanging blows. Of course, Todoroki held an advantage, being able to block attacks as well as dish them out. Feeling cornered, Bakugo jumped into the air, readying his Pulitzer impact, an attack which Todoroki countered with his own special move, the Freeze Flash Heat Wave. A huge explosion was caused in the battlefield as both attacks collided in the air. Both students were thrown back. Once the smoke cleared, Bakugo was unconscious, having landed in the stands. Luckily, he hadn't hit anybody, while Todoroki was still inside the arena, having made an ice wall to catch himself. In the end, he managed to win the fight. After everyone recuperated from their fights, All Might came by to give the winners their medals and some words of encouragement. All were there but Ida, who had to take care of some family business. Shortly after, the closing ceremonies were held and everyone went their separate ways. "What's the situation?" Detective Tsukauchi asked as he stepped into the scene of a crime. "Murder, sir. The victim's name is Mo Dare. Witnesses say he was walking on the street and just suddenly collapsed. The thing is, the story doesn't make sense. He's been dead for at least 3 days. The cause of death was strange though. His heart, livers, and lungs, basically all vital points, severely atrophied to the point that the body couldn't sustain itself. It was like a parasite had sucked out all the strength in him," the CSI answered, giving his assessment of the situation. "So, a quirk that sucks life energy out of people?" Tsukauchi asked. "Could be, but I'm not really sure. We would have to investigate the situation further. There's very little information to go on, the CSI answered. Still, I'll put an APB on the quirk and get the investigation going. Something tells me this is only the start of something big, Tsukauchi said, looking over the body carefully. And that's the end of the video. Hope you all enjoyed as always. If you did, please like to show your support. Subscribe if you're suddenly new to the channel or haven't done so already, because that always helps me out. What else? You can always join the Discord in the description, and I have a couple things to say about all of this. The first one is that this is the last Venom video for a bit. As you know, I've posted the last ones back to back, like 1 week, then the other, then the other, then the other, then the other. 5 parts. Venom will return, but later on. I'm going to be doing it like this with the MHA content for a bit. It's a bit of an experiment, you could say. I'm testing out how well this does. I'll go back to the regular form in a while, but this at least gives me a bit of focus, and I can write everything out properly and gives me time to work on stuff. Next week, a new series is coming. You can stay tuned for the channel for that. I think your guys are gonna like that pretty much. Well, it's a reboot of a series, not really a new series, but still. What else do I have on my list to say? Yeah, subtitles. I hope this video had subtitles for the Venom voice. A lot of people have said they don't understand the Venom voice very well, and that's something I've been working on, but subtitles take a long time to make. So if you go to the subtitles, there should be, in all the previous Venom videos, there should be subtitle options now. That is, of course, I have to make this after the recording of this video. I started making them in part 1, but they take forever, and I only did half the video because videos are pretty long. Because I hate myself, apparently. Yeah. Next week's a different series, and Venom is coming back later on, well, next year, because I have the series all planned out, which one's going to come next, and then after that, hopefully the schedule won't be deterred by anything. If it does, I'll sacrifice the other stuff I have planned instead of MHA, because MHA does well. The algorithm fucking hates Shield Hero, apparently, and sorry for the F word. I did not mean to say that. But yeah, the algorithm doesn't like that. As for what happened in this series, I don't know who listens to these rants at the end of videos, but it happens and it's useful for me. It gives you a chance to kind of connect with me. Or kind of get to know me a bit better, I guess. As for the end of the video, well, you can probably guess what happened there. It's a little post-credit scene to kind of get you wanting more. I have my plans, and here's where it derives from We the Celestials. Although, to be fair, if I had stuck around more with We the Celestials, this would never have happened, because the idea only came to me recently. Because I was like, okay, I need to plan out what's going to happen next. What symbiotes can I use? What can I do here? And then I came up with a pretty cool idea for Riot. So he's going to be going around killing people now. Because, yeah. As for Aizawa losing his arm in the last video, not many people, some people didn't like that or thought it was unnecessary. I was honestly deliberating if to kill him or get his arm off. I don't remember what I said in the last video's outro. I recorded that like 3 weeks ago. Well, that may be an exaggeration. I recorded it a while ago, that's the point. But yeah, Aizawa wasn't in this video, instead Midnight was replacing him. But he'll be back and he'll have a prosthetic arm, likely, because I mean, you need the arm. Someone said he should get a symbiote, so we'll see how that goes. We'll see how the series progress from here, but I hope you guys enjoyed this video, as always. I hope you guys like the little factoids thingies, which I still have no idea what's going to be in this week's, so hope you enjoyed it, because I'll make that later. Yeah. What is this? Yeah, hope you guys enjoyed. See you next week for the new series. And until then, have an absolutely fantastic day. Bye!